leaders to have a place to come together to discuss how they're going to balance their purpose over their paycheck. So this is what we try to focus on in these conversations. Today, we're going to be focusing on LinkedIn, the advanced strategies for network expansion. And the key points we want to cover is why and how to narrow your focus. This is a big challenge for a lot of people. Most of us like to go with more of a shotgun approach, but we're going to talk about why that is not very effective and how to go about narrowing your focus. Next up, we'll talk about 3 steps to find the right people to help you with your network expansion. And then ultimately you have to have conversations with them. So what to ask about and what to share in all types of conversations. Anytime you're looking for a new opportunity, which by the way, most people are looking for new opportunities inside their company or outside their company, roughly about every 3 years at this point. And so 85% of those jobs are found through networking inside your company or outside your company. And 10 to 15% of the jobs are listed in the open job market out there, and 2/3 of the job seekers look at the open job market, meaning job boards effectively, or searching online, maybe directly to company websites. So something like that. However, 85 to 90% of the job market is actually a hidden job market, with more than 40% of those positions not even being in existence yet. And then there's a conversation that leads to the creation of a new position and a new opportunity based on a problem that needs to be solved and someone who has the skills to solve it. And only about 1/3 of job seekers even try to look for the hidden job market. So this is where we want to focus, is how do we stay in touch with our network consistently so that the opportunities that we're looking for are always on the horizon and we're always involved in interesting conversations. So why does your network matter? First of all, it helps you to land purpose over paycheck positions. If we get in a situation where there's been a furlough for COVID reasons, or the company's experienced a merger acquisition and your role is no longer available, having to jump out and figure out where you're going to go next tends to lead us into positions that we accept rather than what we love. So if we're proactive about this, we end up landing purpose over paycheck positions. Your network also helps you to create new opportunities. So again, back to that whole point about people having conversations, expressing their talent, and then being able to create these new opportunities out of the conversation. And ultimately, your network creates currency. So relationships are the currency of business. So that's what we want to dig into a little bit more deeply here. So the first thing is narrowing our focus. How do we go about doing that? How do we define the size and scope of what it is that we are looking for? Why is that important? If you don't know what you want, your network cannot help you get it. And I know you guys have probably resonated with this, and it seems like we're kind of hitting that point in a hard way, but really it is vitally important to figure out for yourself what you're really looking for out of your conversations. Managing your intentions, this is what most of us do right now on LinkedIn. Oftentimes we have a fairly minimal profile. We don't put much in the way of job results in there. We tend to accept and occasionally request connections, but most of the time we're passive and we just kind of wait for things to come our way. We might message someone, but it's generally when we need something. And then we may like or leave a comment here and there on something that we see, but we rarely post anything of our own. And ultimately we kind of pray for others to contact us. Now I'm going to stop for a moment and I'm going to ask Kristen to chime in a little bit on this. In your experience, Kristen, as a recruiter, what have you found when you are looking at people's profiles, even director and above executive LinkedIn profiles? What do you look for that you most often don't find?
Shockingly, I'm always surprised to see how few leaders have a complete profile. So I will say, and I don't think I'm alone in this, recruiters, I bet 95% of recruiters, 90% of their efforts in terms of looking for candidates, it's done on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good place to find candidates because they're both passive and active. Recruiters are always saying we're trying to find passive candidates, the people you wouldn't find on job boards. And that's very true. The way that I do it is I actually build company lists that are synergistic to my clients. And then I'll go find talent within those companies. Like I'll use the who works for these organizations, right? So you have to back into how you build your profile based on how you want your ideal contact to find you, right? So you should make sure that you're tied to an organization. You should make sure, don't ever have the title as actively looking. No recruiter builds a filter by people that are actively looking, ever. It should be something that's not made up. Some of us don't want to be called what we are. Like, I don't actually love being called a recruiter because it feels like it's not enough. But if I call myself a creative storyteller, right, or like something kind of woo-woo, I won't come up in the search filters. So I think on LinkedIn, it's a time to think about how will the person that I want to find me, how are they going to find me? You should
Awesome.
you should have a 100% complete profile, right? Your tagline should make sense. You should have results. You should have your resume uploaded if you're looking, right? That kind of stuff.
Awesome. So those are all the things that we want to be focused on. Having a fully complete profile, having results in there, having connections. Who you are connected to is also indicative of who you are and what circles you are in. Being active out there to share what your ideas are, what your thoughts are, some of your personality, the things that you have done that you're really proud of, and therefore things that you clearly have a passion about. So really important to identify that on your end, and then start thinking about who are your champions, your connectors, and your contributors. And by that we mean champions are actively aligned with you and your goals. There's like 100% mind share. Mind share, by that we mean like Kristen and I know each other very well. We understand each other's values. We understand interests about each other, about her kids, my kids, where we're going in our careers, introductions that would be helpful for each of us. We know those things and we talk about those things and we are actively engaged in the conversation. So that makes us really great champions of each other. Connectors will take your call and give introductions, very important, but they may not always have the level or the clout that you might need. And contributors have your business card and your LinkedIn connection, and they may even have organizations which you are mutually connected to. They may not necessarily be in a position to give introductions or know you well enough to be comfortable to do so. So that's the difference between contributors versus connectors versus champions. And you want to apply these prioritizations to your network that you already have. Let's talk about how and when to do this and what you might do. So first off, consider when do you want people to think of you, as well as what do you want them to think of you for. So when and what. So the kinds of things that you are expert at, that you love to do. If you have things that you're really great at, but you hate to do them, I encourage you to minimize that on your LinkedIn profile and other places that you're communicating. Think about what are your relationship intentions. When you're getting ready to expand your network, think about 3 key questions that will help you to understand, is this person willing and able, both willing and able to help me? Each person that you're reaching out to, are they going to be useful? Are they going to be helpful? Are they willing to do that? So all of those things. Next, figuring out what are the right opportunities for your career advancement, and then thinking about who does that typically come from. Where do those come from? Maybe it's from organizations that you're a professional organization that you're a member of. Making sure that you let your interesting but unaligned opportunities pass you by. So saying no to conversations that take up a lot of time that aren't really going to get you someplace. So setting the size and scope. Here's a great example of how that might happen. So you want to think about geography. That's one aspect of size and scope. Where in the world? Would it be in the United States or elsewhere? What kind of industry? And you want to focus on top 3 industries that you may want to be focusing in on, that are industries you are interested in working in, not necessarily just industries you have had experience in, but really considering where you want to work and thinking about why you want to work in those industries. Then think about job titles of the people that you would want to be talking to. So would it be the CFO? Would that be a good connection for you? Would the CTO, the Chief Technical Officer, be good? How about an Executive Vice President of? Is that level the appropriate level? And that could be in HR, marketing, sales, VPs, chief. HR officer, etc. So figuring out the actual titles and functional areas that the people you are most interested in talking with, because you're interested in finding out more about their group, their area, functional area, and that's an area that you are learning about or want to learn about or already consider yourself an expert. Then thinking about company size. Which of these levels are you most interested in working in? A lot of people that will start this endeavor will consider, oh, I'm interested in, companies from 200 to 10,000. And in reality, there's a really big difference in working in a culture of 5,000 to 10,000 versus 200 to 500. And each of these levels, it's pretty uniquely different. So being mindful of what do I really want to do? What am I most passionate about? If you've worked in a large company, you may have decided you really don't like all the politics there, and it might be time to pursue a company that's a lot smaller, because you can be a big fish in a small pond and really have a nice seat at the table where you can have a bigger impact. Or you may be going the other direction. Either way, pick it and make a choice about it. Trying to cross across every single title, every single functional area, and every company size leads to very ineffective searching and finding of the right people. So the next step here is, once we've figured out what we want to talk about, what we're looking for, how do we find the right people who can help us with those conversations? So we're going to jump in on the LinkedIn side of things. LinkedIn is not an open database. Just because I do a search for a person's name and that person is on LinkedIn does not mean I will see that person showing up in my network of search results when I search for a particular set of criteria or even by person name. If I am not connected enough, I won't actually get to see them. So it's really important to be connecting to people in the right industries, in the right level, with the right kinds of titles and things. So the right kind of people, but actively connecting to grow your network. It is an exponential growth, and then use your relationship rules to connect with them. Here's how we go about this. We start in on a search, CFO and SaaS. Once you type in your search, you're going to start to see these different areas of categories. And of course, there's the happy little all filters on the right-hand side. Within the all filters, you can then search by companies, companies of this type. This little drop down will allow you to look at people and other filtering criteria to allow you to check boxes or even add new information over here. So I didn't give you the whole thing to drop down to, but you get the idea. It truly does allow you to find which companies in North America that are financial services companies having 11 to 50 employees. Show me that list. That's how it works. And then from there, you'll think about looking for those actual target companies. So drilling down, I've got a list of companies. Let's say DaVita popped up on the list. That looks interesting to me. I want to know a little bit more. How many connections do I have in DaVita? And what is DaVita doing about? What are they doing these days? So the about us for the company and the connections is an important next step for you to look through. Following that, drilling down on these connections. So who works there? So here's, a list of results of the contacts in the company. Now, this is showing the first level connections first, obviously. You can look in first level connections, or you can drill down to next level after that as well. Keeping in mind, if you don't have enough of the first connections, maybe not any, don't overlook going after second connections. And then seeing, I don't happen to know Lindsay yet, but there are 131 people that we do have as shared connections. So who might I connect with here, because I really want to talk to Lindsay, that does know Lindsay, that could make that introduction for me. So that's how this stuff works. So first degrees will lead to second degree contacts. Obviously connecting with first degrees could be great, but if I don't want to talk to the executive recruiter just yet to find out about the company, I might want to go to someone else and work my way around to it. If you reach out to an executive recruiter at a company and say, hey, I'm interested in something on the job board, they're going to say, great, apply. They're not going to engage in a conversation, which is our step number 3. Again, I'm going to come back to Kristen. As a recruiter, I'd love to have you walk through your search process of how you go about doing that same sort of step-by-step, filter by filter, to share from the other side of the picture how that works from a recruiter.
Sure. Just from a LinkedIn standpoint, so what we would do is we would use the advanced criteria like you did, right? So let me use a real example. Right now, I'm looking for a business/project manager for a renewable energy company in Southern California. I want to know every single renewable energy, solar, wind, battery. I also want to know utility, oil and gas. So the first thing I do is I do a company search on LinkedIn. I want to know how many companies exist. What most recruiters do is they go right to a people search. I'm going to look for business and project managers in people, and then they'll work within these companies because I'll highlight the industry. I think that's sort of you're going to miss a lot of context. So I do isolated company search, then I find the people within those organizations, right? And then what I would do is typically I don't even limit it by connection. Like, I don't care if I'm connected to them or not. I'm going to find a way to get to them, right? Recruiters use LinkedIn in a very different way. And so you have to also understand, like, when you're asking for people to give you introductions via LinkedIn, understand how pure of a user they are, how well they know their network, right? Because sometimes it's uncomfortable. I only know them because they came up in a search 10 years ago, right? That wouldn't be an appropriate intro. But anyway, so then I have a list of candidates. Problem is, LinkedIn doesn't just give you phone numbers and emails. So what I do then is I actually go through and I look up, I prioritize ABC contacts, and I'd go up and I'd find corporate headquarter numbers. I have a bucket of tools that help me find people's personal emails or work emails, or I go to their website and I find their domain address, like davita.com, and I find a format. Usually it's first.last@davita.com. You can verify an email format, and there's email verifiers. You know everybody's email address at that company. So I think the best way to stand out as a candidate, if I'm looking to apply for a job, would not be to apply for the job. 8,000 other people are going to do that. The best thing would be to find the hiring manager. Let's say it's the CFO. I find his phone number on the corporate website. He's going to have an aggressive admin, so you're going to have to be prepared for that. And I also find his email format, and I'll send a personal note, right? Now, in my instance, it's recruiting, and I'm looking to recruit Bob. In your instance, it might be, I just want to have a meeting because I've done research and I'm interested in your organization, right? There's a little section on LinkedIn when I'm looking at somebody's profile, and it'll say people that viewed this profile also viewed, and it'll give people within the organization, people they're connected to. I'll also look through and I'll see their recommendations. So I'll go down to that level, the groups they're involved with. Sometimes I'll even join the group. Like, I want to join project management in renewable energy group. That's how intense I'll get with LinkedIn. And again, I'd say 80% of my candidates come from LinkedIn.
Awesome. So again, from the other side, from your perspective as an individual, how do you get conversations going with the people that you want to talk to? Figure out, who do I want to be working for? What kind of size of industry? What kind of companies? If you're working in renewable energy because you want to be doing something great for the planet, excellent example. The first thing you want to do, the only goal you have, is to get a reply back. You just want to get a person, especially if you don't already know them, to reply back to you. You can do that in a variety of different ways. I'm going to talk about that. What you're not trying to do is tell them, hey, I'm looking for a job in your company, and I know that you are connected into the right kind of people, and I was wondering if I could just talk to you about that. Might seem like a really great idea, however, it will get you nowhere. So we don't recommend doing that particular approach. The other thing is figuring out how you're going to pique the curiosity of that other person, thinking about pulling on heartstrings, something a little bit emotional, something evocative that will get them to stop, think, and be intrigued enough to reply back. So openers, the subject of it, the first line of it needs to be both relevant and compelling. And don't forget to figure out what's going to be a benefit to them for having a conversation with you, and then ultimately coming up with the next step. So let's talk about how that looks. On LinkedIn, the first thing you would have to do, if you don't already know this person, is connection request. So in that, we always remind you is that you have to put a personal message in your invitation to connect. Leaving this blank, it's either going to take a lot longer or it's never going to happen. So making clear to them what it is that you're going to talk about in the custom invitation to connect, the request to connect. It could be something as simple as, I saw your LinkedIn profile was recommended to me and your background looks very impressive. I would value a conversation to discuss. If you read something about their profile that piqued your interest, which you do have to learn about the person, what groups they're interested in, who they have been recommended by, what their background is, what companies they've worked with, anything on their profile that indicates accomplishments and achievements, reference that. I noticed you've done an amazing job on a turnaround. I'd love to talk with you a little more to learn more about that. So something really simple to pique interest. There's 3 different ways to think about connecting on LinkedIn. One, of course, is a straight up connection request. The second is an in-mail, where if you're only a third connection, you won't necessarily be able to do a direct connection request, but you would be able to send them an in-mail through LinkedIn. And then the other thing that Kristen mentioned, which is an excellent way to reach out to a whole lot of people directly, is in groups. So joining LinkedIn groups that have the common interests of the things that you are targeting as well. So industry related groups is a great way to do that. These are 3 different ways to come at that. You can get directly to a person much easier through a group and mentioning the group interaction and commonality. There's already a sense of a commonality when you're both in the same groups, and it feels a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more warm and inviting. So that's why these particular strategies will help you, especially the groups. How do you get that connection request is also about focusing on things that you're impressed with that other person, things that you have in common, like groups, areas of discussion that you might talk about, and then ultimately proposing a day or time that you would want to talk with them or have available to talk with them 1 week out. We connected through this group. I work with this consumer products company. You have an impressive background in global logistics space. I'd value having a conversation regarding the operational support you're currently doing and discussing strategies. Would you have time next week, Tuesday or Wednesday after 2 Eastern time, for a 30-minute call? This part right here is extremely critical to getting a response. People that are on LinkedIn are typically pretty busy. They like to read things very quickly. And so you have to make it a little bit formatted in order for them to be able to skim quickly, get to the point, and making sure that you include your time zone and times that you have available so they can easily respond and say, Tuesday at 2 works great. 30 minutes is awesome. Can you send an invite? Like, that's typically how that conversation is going to go. This is a well-designed script, and the reason I'm laying this out for you is it's important that you come up with written scripts like this that you literally are copying and pasting in. If you're going to do your outreach at, say, 10 different people a week that you want to be reaching out to, which you'll end up having about 4 to 5 conversations in the coming 1 or 2 weeks. And then you'll have another 1 or 2 conversations that'll be 2 or 3 weeks later if you are persistent and you have a series of scripts like this. So it's important to build your scripts beforehand so that you don't spend too much time rethinking what you're going to be saying to each person. A good way to do it is get started and just copy out each of the messages that you're customizing every time for the first week. Grab them, put them onto a sheet, and then come back at the end of the week and look at it and go, I see the common themes of how I normally talk. And these 2 or 3 things, I got a really great results when I sent this particular message. You can kind of start to see which things are going to get your best results. I cannot overemphasize, number 1, do not use links like Calendly inside of LinkedIn. People will not click on them at all, and they will completely turn off from any future conversation with you if you put a Calendly link to be efficient into your conversations on LinkedIn. Number 2, putting in the time zone, so important. If you're connecting with people across the United States or certainly across the world, you have to really emphasize that EST, PST, and when they respond back, you have to reiterate that because more often than not, they're not paying attention and they're assuming you're talking about their time. Another good trick is to put in their time zone. So 3 p.m. MST, so look at their profile enough to know where they're actually at in the world and put things into their perspective. Make it easy for them. What do you talk about? You finally get them to agree to a conversation with you. What should you talk about? Well, coming back to what are you impressed with about them? A proud moment that they can relate to that's in a similar area of expertise that is your proud moment. And then ultimately how you can help them and how they can help you. You want to make sure that you're getting into two-way conversations that are mutually beneficial. Here's what not to talk about on that first conversation. I see you've got a job post at your company. Don't talk about it. I'm at this company and things are going really bad. My boss sucks and everything's really horrible. Don't discuss that either, because it's going to reflect upon the other person that this is how you talk about others, and they will be part of that conversation soon as well. Is their hidden expectation or fear? I would highly recommend avoiding politics, religion, and I'm going to throw this one out there, diversity challenges, unless you're both in DE&I. I think these are really hot topics that are negatively charged for the most part. It's like really difficult to get to a win-win on any of these. Once you have the conversations, the goal is to figure out how do you get to a next conversation. And one of the key ways to do that for future conversations is getting to know each other. So we know where they live in the community, what they love to do. We might know something about their career. Oftentimes children is a kind of a tier 2 level conversation you might step into after maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Geography and community is the easy thing, and career is the second easy thing. And then the rest of these follow. The more difficult things to think about and remember is what information would they like to get. So information about what, invitations to what, introductions to whom. Gathering these 3 things will help you get to a future conversation. So overall, you'll have coffee conversations. They will oftentimes turn into informational meetings that can lead to opportunities. So they might start this way, lead into this way, and here's how you would go about doing that. Figuring out what are their goals. So understanding what are they doing on it, what's coming up this quarter, what are some of the biggest things that you guys have planned this quarter or this year, annual goals, quarterly goals. What are some of the challenges around arriving at those big picture goals, things that are not working, hurdles they're running into, people that aren't delivering, not necessarily by name, but more of it by area type of issues. My Scrum Masters are really struggling with the new software that we implemented. We've got to get back to using Jira. It didn't work what we tried, etc., etc. So challenges that's keeping them from achieving their big goals. Sharing your proud moment, doing these kinds of things previously. Here's one of the things that we found that was really helpful. My team did this and we were able to achieve these kinds of results with metrics numbers 1, 2, and 3. So giving them something that they can remember. When we doubled our productivity in less than 30 days and we did it with this one amazing piece of software, you're going to want to know what software and how did I implement that. Picking 2 interests. Out of those 4 C's and 3 I's, figuring out a couple of interests, out of any of those 7, honestly, just 2 things to start with is a good thing for you to know and capture somewhere, however you're going to capture that. And then recapping at the end of your conversation, here's some of the things that I came away with from our conversation, and I'd love to set another time to talk with you a little bit more about that. So your action, your timing, would that be okay with you? And making sure that as a part of that, you're also asking about who else might you talk to. Those are ideas about that. Things to include: geography, that's easy. Digging in next to target industries. Describing your work history, but obviously not in a resume fashion, but really things that you love to do, types of organizations you enjoy working with, like 250 person organizations. I love this group. I used to be in a 10,000 person organization, a $1 billion company. I really didn't enjoy that nearly as much. One of the things I'm most proud of is with these couple of results, as a part, weaving these things into your conversation, and most importantly, things that you're really interested in, opportunities, being a board member, being a mentor, finding opportunities in sales because I'm really tired of marketing, whatever that is, making sure you're clear about it when you come into the conversation. So here's our quick recap. Key points: narrow your focus, find the right people, and build rapport so you create traction. So keeping that in mind, developing your target industries and companies, figuring out who in your network is your network MVPs, most valuable people, players who might assist you as well. Creating your scripts for speed and accuracy, focusing on them. So enjoy the conversations. The most important thing out of all of this is don't make this a drudgery activity that you're going to then not want to do on a weekly basis. Figure out how you're going to enjoy the conversation by learning cool things about interesting people, and make sure you're connecting with those kinds of people to start with. Be intentional about next steps and make sure you get a two-way warm introduction. So who can I introduce you to? Who could you introduce me to? What might I share with you? What might you share with me? And then continue to follow up. So figuring out what your next 3 steps are going to be once every 3 months, that you're going to continue to reach out to these people. There's no point in doing all of this amazing work if you're not going to continue to rekindle the relationships over time. A once every 3 months touch is a good one. For some people who are really helpful and you're going to be doing something fun and fantastic, once a month might be more appropriate. So figuring that out is what you want to do. And that's partly why we put together the Career Connects platform, is to help you do these different pieces of what we talked about. Discover your story, create your target list, build your personal brand toolbox, which includes housing those scripts in there, developing your strategies to attract your ideal interactions for whatever your personal purpose is, figuring out how and prompting you and reminding you to expand your brand through the power of social media, even beyond LinkedIn, but starting with LinkedIn is a great starting point. Some people are on Instagram and really love it. Some are still on Facebook, and that's okay. So there's different places you might go to share different information. Curating intentional connections. So within the platform, we help you to do that. And automating your connections, community interactions. Putting all of that together, getting expert support anytime you need it. So that's what we built this whole platform for. We're here to help connect you and widen your network. So just let us know how we can help.